She slammed her brakes in the middle of a snowstorm. A German shepherd was tied to a lamppost, frozen, silent, dying. But what she uncovered next wasn't just a case of animal cruelty. It was a cover-up, a betrayal, and a truth they tried to erase. Why him? Why now? And how far would you go to save what others left behind? The storm had swallowed the city whole. Wind screamed between the buildings of Portwell like a furious animal, dragging snow in every direction, blanketing the streets in thick, colorless silence. The only sound that dared cut through the roar was the low growl of a maintenance truck, making its slow crawl through the icy maze of downtown's outer district. Behind the wheel sat Elena Rowe, 34, tall and lean, her shoulders perpetually hunched as though bracing against some unseen blow. Her reddish-brown hair, damp with sweat and snow, clung to her temples beneath a knit beanie, and her pale green eyes, sharp, observant, moved constantly, scanning for faults, glitches, breakages. Years working as a city electrical technician had trained her to see what others overlooked. But tonight, she wasn't searching for broken transformers or downed lines. She just wanted to get home. Elena lived alone, always had, ever since that one July afternoon 6 years ago when her younger brother Milo had touched a faulty junction box during a volunteer cleanup event and collapsed in her arms before the ambulance could arrive. Since then, she'd found solace in machines. Quiet, predictable, indifferent. People asked too many questions. Machines just needed fixing. As her truck rumbled past the abandoned storefronts, headlights cutting through the snow like twin knives, something shifted in the corner of her vision. She tapped the brakes gently. There, just off the sidewalk, under the harsh glow of a flickering lamppost, a dark, slumped shape broke the white symmetry of the street. Elena narrowed her eyes, squinting against the storm. It wasn't moving. She pulled the truck to a full stop and stepped out, boots crunching into the snow, with a suddenness that felt almost sacrilegious in the stillness. Her breath came out in gusts of white steam as she approached the figure, flashlight raised. Then her stomach turned. Tied to the steel post by a length of heavy chain, half buried in snow and barely upright, was a German shepherd. Its fur was matted with ice and dirt, black and tan coloring dulled by frost. The dog's ribs jutted out beneath its skin like the ridges of a broken frame, and its head hung low, eyes dull and barely open. It didn't bark. It didn't even flinch. It simply looked at her. Elena dropped to her knees beside the animal, cursing aloud. "You poor thing! Who the hell did this to you?" She reached out, gingerly brushing snow from its muzzle. No response, only the faintest shudder, a breath like a whisper. The chain around its neck had fused to the metal pole with ice, and part of it had cut deep into the fur and skin below. She could see blood, dark and frozen. Without hesitation, she dashed back to her truck, yanked open the emergency toolkit, and grabbed her cable cutters. Her gloves were already soaked. She tore them off with her teeth, fingers trembling from both cold and fury, and returned to the dog, kneeling again. "I've got you," she muttered. The steel was nearly impossible to cut, rigid with cold, and every tug sent new shivers through her bones. Her fingers cracked and bled as she twisted and pressed, her body shielding the dog from the wind. The dog made a weak sound, a sort of broken whine, and for the first time, its gaze met hers not with defeat, but something like recognition. That was all she needed. After what felt like an eternity, the chain gave a reluctant groan and snapped away from the post. The dog slumped instantly, collapsing into her lap like a sack of bones. Elena caught him, heart pounding, hands raw and red. She lifted him slowly, arms wrapped around his skeletal body, his fur stiff and cold against her chest. He barely weighed anything. Across the narrow street, behind the frosted glass of a second-floor window, a small face peeked out. Ava Lehman, 8 years old, pale and freckled, with a sharp little chin and mismatched socks, watched silently from her bedroom. She was a curious child, observant, a little too clever for her age. When her mother had gone to night shift, Ava had pulled up a chair and opened her window just a crack to listen to the snow breathe, as she liked to say. What she saw now made her eyes widen. A woman she didn't know was cradling what looked like a dead dog in her arms. Ava hurried to her desk, flipping open a journal she called The Snow Files, and began to draw. In it, she sketched the woman's sharp face, the sagging dog, and the strange way the street lamp above them glowed like a lonely halo. Back on the ground, Elena staggered toward her truck, the dog in her arms. "Just hold on, okay?" she whispered, opening the passenger door with an elbow and easing him onto the seat. He didn't resist. He didn't even move. She could barely feel his breath now, but she could feel it. That was enough. A few houses down, Mildred Foster, 73, pulled the curtain aside with a huff. She had lived on Hamilton Street for nearly 50 years, and nothing stirred after 10 o'clock unless it was trouble. She was a tall, thin woman with iron gray hair pinned tightly and a sharp mouth that often spoke faster than it thought. Peering through the window, she saw a stranger loading something, an animal, maybe a dog, into a city vehicle. Mildred scowled and picked up her landline. "There's someone out here stealing animals," she told the emergency line, clutching her floral robe closed. "Middle of a blizzard, no less. Probably one of those street people. Might want to send someone to check it out." Then she hung up, satisfied. Inside her truck, Elena wrapped the last clean blanket from her back seat around the dog's body and blasted the heater. "You're not dying here," she said firmly, her voice hoarse from cold and adrenaline. "Not tonight." She didn't know why she was talking to him. Maybe because he was the first living thing to look at her like he needed her since Milo died. She drove off into the night, tires crunching on frozen asphalt, unaware that 3 lives, hers, the dog's, and a little girl across the street, had just become tangled in a storm bigger than snow. The door slammed behind her as the cold wind tried to follow. Elena dropped her keys into the chipped ceramic bowl by the door, the one with a faded daisy painted on the inside, and turned to face the chaos she'd just invited into her carefully controlled world. The house was dim, lit only by the soft amber glow of the old wall lamp in the living room. It was a modest place, a single-story, 2-bedroom bungalow on the edge of Portwell's aging residential district. Beige walls, wood floors, furniture second-hand but clean, sparse, tidy, a space that didn't ask questions. Now, it smelled like wet fur and blood. Juno lay on the woven rug in front of the electric fireplace. His body looked too large for the space, yet somehow fragile, as if one wrong sound might make him fall apart. Elena had stripped off her jacket and wrapped it around him, layering a wool blanket on top. A small space heater rattled to life near his side. He didn't stir. His breath came in uneven huffs, like air passing through a cracked flute. She dropped to her knees beside him, cradling a bowl of warm water and honey in her lap. "Come on, buddy," she whispered, dipping a clean rag into the bowl. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from something deeper, more dangerous: fear. "Just a little bit. You've got a drink." She dabbed at his cracked lips, then tried to trickle a drop of water into the corner of his mouth. Nothing. The only sound in the room was the hum of the heater and the ticking of the thermostat. Elena sat back on her heels. Her jeans were soaked from the snow, her boots discarded somewhere near the door. Her fingers were scraped, raw, and beginning to swell, but she barely noticed. Her gaze settled on the photograph above the fireplace. A boy, maybe 18, grinning with a lopsided smile and grease-stained hands, standing next to a red dirt bike. Milo Rowe, her younger brother. Gone 6 years. His loss had etched lines into Elena's face, pulled her spine inward, made her wary of forming any bond she might have to watch break. Milo had died from a live wire no one else had noticed. And Elena? Elena had been standing 10 feet away, too late to stop it, too slow to save him. She stared at the dog's unmoving form. "Don't you dare give up," she murmured, voice rough. "Not like he did." A soft knock broke through the silence. Elena turned sharply. Another knock, louder this time. She stood, one hand instinctively dropping to the multi-tool she kept in her back pocket. She opened the door just enough to see over the security chain. On her porch stood a little girl in rainbow pajamas and a puffy pink parka that swallowed her tiny frame. Her hair was strawberry blonde, curly and unbrushed, and she held a plastic container wrapped in aluminum foil with mittened hands. Ava Lehman was the kind of child who asked too many questions and trusted her instincts before adults. She lived with her single mother 3 doors down, and she'd developed a strange fondness for watching the neighborhood from her upstairs window, like a pint-sized sentinel. "I saw you last night," Ava said, matter-of-factly, eyes wide but not scared. "With the dog. Is he okay?" Elena blinked, then sighed. He's not dead. That's good. Ava held up the container. These are leftover meatballs. They're turkey, not beef. My mom's on this heart thing. Elena stared at the girl. You're not supposed to talk to strangers. Ava shrugged. You're not that strange. You saved him. Elena considered the child for a moment, then undid the chain. She took the container with a nod. Thanks. Ava craned her neck to peek past Elena's legs. Can I see him? No. Can I come by tomorrow? We'll see. That seemed to satisfy her. She nodded solemnly, then turned and trotted back into the snow. Elena closed the door and locked it, heart still racing from the intrusion. She returned to Juno's side, set the container aside, and resumed wiping his snout. She didn't know what was more disconcerting, having a dying dog in her home, or the fact that a child had looked at her and seen something good. 20 minutes later, another knock. This one heavier, impatient. Elena groaned. This time she opened the door with the chain still firmly in place. Standing there, wrapped in a massive winter coat lined with faux fur, was Mildred Foster, age 73, self-appointed block monitor, former school librarian, and eternal skeptic. Her gray curls peeked out from beneath a hunter-green knit cap, and her expression was already pursed like she'd sucked on a lemon. I saw a report come through on the neighborhood line, she announced without greeting, about a woman in a utility truck picking up animals. That wouldn't happen to be you, would it? Elena exhaled slowly. It would. Mildred's gaze flicked to the side, like she was trying to see past Elena's shoulder. City regulations don't allow unauthorized animal rescue. You should have called animal services. Elena's voice turned to stone. He would have frozen before they picked up the phone. Well, Mildred sniffed, be careful who you bring into your home. Not all strays stay grateful. Before Elena could reply, a weak sound came from behind her, a low, warbling whimper. Mildred's sharp eyes focused instantly. Is that a German shepherd? She asked, squinting. Elena didn't answer. I had one, years ago, Mildred said, her voice softening just a fraction. Before the fire, big boy, named Tucker, saved my life. Elena's brow rose. Really? Mildred didn't elaborate. She stepped back. Just be careful, she muttered, and turned on her heel, her boots crunching away into the snow. Elena shut the door and leaned against it, the cold from the metal seeping into her back. When she turned around, Juno had opened one eye, just barely, but it was open. She dropped beside him, heart in her throat. Hey, she whispered. There you are. He blinked slowly, almost lazily, like it took too much effort to care. You're safe now. He didn't move, but his tail gave a single slow thump against the rug, and that, after everything, was enough. The morning light broke through Elena's windows as a pale blur, filtered through layers of frost clinging stubbornly to the glass. Portwell's winter wasn't soft or poetic. It was a brutal, slow-moving siege. Elena moved stiffly around her living room, cradling a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Her body ached from sleeping half upright on the floor beside Juno, but her mind was alert, wired from adrenaline and worry. Juno was breathing easier now, though still weak. The makeshift nest she had built for him, blankets, space heaters, her old parka, was holding his warmth in better than she'd hoped. He hadn't moved much, but every so often his ear twitched or a paw jerked slightly in his sleep, as though chasing something only he could see. Then came the sound, a distant wail, metallic and sharp. The ambulance siren from a few blocks away, muffled by distance but unmistakable. Juno's body shot up with sudden violence, legs scrambling, claws scraping hard wood. His breath went ragged. He snarled, not at anyone in the room, but at memory itself. His eyes were wide and unfocused, ears pinned back. He lunged backward into the bookshelf, knocking a stack of paperbacks onto the floor. Juno! Hey, easy! Elena knelt beside him, hands out. You're okay. That's not now. That's not here. It took a full minute for the panic to fade. When it did, Juno slumped again, chest heaving, eyes glazing over. Elena sat beside him, shoulders sagging. You've seen too much, she murmured. She ran her fingers gently under his collar to check for rawness and felt something hard, something embedded just beneath the fur at the base of his neck. She leaned in closer, parting the hair with careful fingers. A small metal chip, no bigger than a grain of rice, was lodged beneath the skin. A microchip. She reached for her phone, thumb hovering over the contacts list. She hesitated. Calling animal services was out of the question. She didn't trust bureaucracy not to fail this dog again. But there was someone else. Noah Barrett had worked Portwell PD for 9 years, first as patrol, now as part of a community outreach unit. He was 38, broad-shouldered and quiet-voiced, with a strong jaw and the kind of eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of lie and just chose not to react. His hair was cut close, military style, already flecked with gray. He had once been known as someone who could calm a room just by walking into it. But 2 years ago, a failed hostage negotiation had left him off active rotation. Now, he handled smaller cases. Animal complaints, noise violations, missing persons, things that required presence without escalation. Elena sent a brief message. Found a chip in the dog. Can you scan it? Discreetly. 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Noah standing in the snow, wearing a dark wool coat, black gloves, and a subtle weariness that clung to his features like stubble. He didn't smile. He never did. "You got something for me?" he asked simply. Elena stepped aside and gestured toward the living room. Juno, now resting more cautiously near the heater, lifted his head but did not move. His eyes watched Noah carefully, assessing, not yet trusting. Noah crouched slowly, producing a small scanner from his coat pocket. "Let's see what you got, buddy." The chip beeped. Noah read the screen, then his brow furrowed. "This dog's registered to Portwell Search and Rescue," he said, tone neutral. "Name's listed as Jasper. No reported transfer of ownership, no death notice, just nothing." Elena crossed her arms. Can a working dog like him just disappear off the record? Noah didn't answer at first. He sat back on his heels, frowning. "There's been whispers," he said finally. "Last 6 months we've had 5 reports of K9S showing up abandoned. Usually older dogs, some with injuries, all with wiped records. Jasper's the first one I've seen who's still got his chip intact." Elena's stomach twisted. "So someone's scrubbing their history and dumping them?" "Looks like it." A soft rustle behind them interrupted the grim revelation. Both turned. Mildred Foster, wrapped in a navy blue overcoat and dragging a grocery bag behind her on a squeaky-wheeled cart, stood just outside the open door. Her posture was stiff, her breath visible in white puffs. "I brought kibble," she said without preamble, "and rice. Dogs in shock do better with starch." Elena blinked. "How did you know he was in shock?" Mildred stepped inside, her boots squeaking against the mat. She looked down at Juno, who didn't growl, but didn't exactly welcome her either. "That's him," she whispered after a long pause. "That's the one from the fire." Elena furrowed her brow. "You're sure?" Mildred nodded slowly. 3 years ago, fire in a warehouse on Hanover Street. I was caught behind a shelf collapse. They sent in the dogs before they cleared human units. He found me, pulled at my coat until someone came. He had a scar on his left leg above the ankle. She crouched down, slower than Noah, and gently reached for Juno's leg. Her fingers brushed the fur, revealing a thin white line, barely visible. Juno didn't flinch. Mildred sat back, eyes glassy. "No one ever told me his name, just that he'd been retired." Elena turned to Noah. "Still think this is all just a mistake?" Noah stood. "No," he said, voice grave. "Now I think someone's making these dogs disappear. Quietly, efficiently, like they're removing evidence." Mildred, still seated on the floor, reached into her bag and pulled out a faded dog tag. "I kept this," she said softly. "From my old boy, Tucker. Another shepherd. Died 10 years ago. Maybe your friend here could use it." Elena took it gently. It was round, scratched, but still legible. It read, "Loyal, brave, home." She looked at Juno. "We're going to get you a new tag," she said. "But first, we're going to get your story back." Juno didn't respond, but he didn't look away, and for the first time since she found him, his eyes didn't look lost. Snow still clung to the shoulders of Elena's coat as she stepped through the double doors of the Portwell Emergency Response Training Center, her boots wet against the polished linoleum. The building was clean, brightly lit, and cold in a bureaucratic kind of way, sterile, like nothing emotional had ever happened here. But it had. The walls might not have remembered, but she had no doubt the truth still lived somewhere inside. Beside her walked Noah Barrett, expression unreadable as usual, though his hands were balled into fists inside his coat pockets. He hated these visits. Offices with rules, receptionists trained to deflect, systems designed to bury more than protect. His badge still got him through most doors, but it didn't do much against stone-faced middle managers. At the front desk sat a woman in her late 40s, neat bun, wire-rimmed glasses, and a tight smile that never quite reached her eyes. Her nameplate read, Connie Marks, and the way she held her posture screamed former military, or someone who really wanted to be. "May I help you?" she asked, fingers hovering above the keyboard, like they were waiting for a reason to deny access. Noah stepped forward, presenting his badge, but not offering it. "We're looking for incident reports and K9 retirement records from 2 years ago. Dog ID #3729B, call sign Jasper." Connie blinked, her smile shrinking. "That information is sealed, internal classification." Elena leaned over the desk. "We're not asking for nuclear launch codes. This dog was found abandoned and nearly frozen to death 3 days ago. He's got a chip registered to your program, and no one seems to know or care how he got from active duty to a snowbank." "I understand," Connie replied, her tone brittle. "But unless you have a formal subpoena or authorization from Director Krell's office, I'm not permitted to share internal reports." At the mention of Alan Krell, Noah's jaw tensed. He stepped back, gesturing for Elena to follow. They walked back into the foyer where a mural of Portwell's emergency heroes was painted across one wall. Firefighters, paramedics, and dogs included. One of the dogs looked eerily like Juno, mid-leap, eyes focused. "He was here," Elena muttered. "He worked these halls, and now they pretend he doesn't exist." Noah didn't respond immediately. He studied the mural with narrowed eyes. "Alan Krell," he said finally. "He funded half this facility through his construction company. If Juno's name got tangled in something messy, Krell would bury it before it stained his portfolio." "What kind of messy?" Elena asked. "Depends what happened during that fire," Noah replied, "and who was involved." As they left the center, the snow had started again. Thin, whisper-like flurries dusting the windshield of Elena's truck. She climbed in slowly, gripping the wheel without starting the engine. "He's not just another dog to them," she said. "He's proof of something, and someone worked hard to make him disappear." That night, as the storm picked up again, Mildred Foster sat in Elena's kitchen with her gloved hands wrapped around a mug of cocoa. Her back was straight, her eyes more focused than Elena had seen before. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor tonight. She was a witness. "It was a Thursday," Mildred said. "Late summer. I remember because the grocery store was running that buy one get one on frozen pies, and I'd stocked up. That afternoon, I went down to the Portwell Co-op to donate some of my garden vegetables. On the way back, I took Hanover Street. I shouldn't have." She paused, her fingers tightening on the mug. "There was smoke before I heard the sirens. Warehouse on the corner was already half engulfed. I saw a woman screaming. She said her son was still inside. The responders blocked off the street, but they sent dogs in first. One of them was a shepherd, lean but strong, same markings as your Juno. I didn't know his name then, but I remember what he did. He darted into that wreck like fire didn't scare him. Minutes later, he dragged the boy out by the hoodie, just before the wall collapsed." Elena listened, goosebumps rising. "But that night, the news said one of the dogs had attacked a crew member during evacuation," Mildred continued. "They didn't show the dog's face, just said it was retired due to instability." "Instability?" Elena echoed. Mildred shook her head. "He was the only one that went into the fire, the only one that came out bleeding." Noah, sitting nearby with his notepad, looked up. "Do you remember who filed the report?" "Some assistant from Krell's team, PR department, I think. Man with a comb-over and a fake tan. Sounded like he was reading a script." The next morning, Elena's inbox buzzed with a new message. The sender, Jenny Collins. Subject, something you need to see. Warehouse fire footage. Attached, a video file and a brief message. My partner Ben flew the drone that day. We were working on a campus docu-series about first responders. We caught something no one aired. Elena clicked play. The video began with a wide aerial shot. Smoke pouring from the warehouse, emergency vehicles crowding the block. Sirens blared faintly in the distance. Then the camera dipped low, zooming through the chaos. A tan and black German shepherd dashed through the debris with impossible precision, navigating falling beams and thick smoke. He emerged dragging a child, limp, coughing, alive. A minute later, the camera caught a man in a fire marshal vest arguing with another handler. The shepherd, still panting, stood behind them, blood on his leg. The audio was garbled, but a single phrase came through clearly. "That dog didn't bite anyone. He pulled the kid out." The video cut abruptly. Elena's hands trembled. She forwarded the video to Noah with a single message. "We've got proof." That night, she sat on the floor with Juno curled beside her. He was still thin, still quiet, but when she rested a hand on his back, he leaned into it. Slowly, carefully. She whispered, "You remember, don't you? That fire, that boy, you saved him." Juno didn't move, but his breathing slowed, evened. For the first time since she'd brought him home, he fell asleep without trembling. Portwell hadn't seen a storm like this in over a decade. Wind clawed at rooftops, snapping tree limbs like matchsticks, and plastering snow to every surface with the force of a thrown fist. Elena Rose stood on the porch of her small house, breath visible in the cold, watching as the streetlights flickered, once, twice, then gave up the fight and went dark. Inside the house, every appliance fell silent in the same instant. The space heater, the refrigerator, the hum of the old radio in the kitchen. Elena exhaled, long and slow, already reaching for her insulated work coat hanging by the door. A city-issued text pinged her phone. Widespread outage, substation C compromised, all techs report. She cursed under her breath. Her fingers trembled as she zipped up her coat and glanced toward the living room, where Juno lay curled on the rug near the now silent heater. His head rose slightly at the sudden quiet, ears twitching. Snowlight leaked in through the windows, painting his fur in ghostly gray. "I'll be back soon," Elena told him. 2 hours, tops. She dropped a few hand warmers into his blanket nest, grabbed her toolbox, and stepped into the storm. 10 minutes later, Juno was alone. It wasn't long before something shifted. The back gate creaked open, quietly, like someone had practiced. Footsteps muffled by snow approached the house. A figure crouched by the side window, waited. When no light stirred, the figure moved toward the back door. The door didn't resist. It had been jimmied open with professional ease. Inside, Juno lifted his head, nose twitching. He didn't growl, didn't bark, but his body tensed, muscles ready to spring. The figure stepped into view. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in all-black winter gear, his face hidden beneath a scarf and goggles. He carried a long leash and a tranquilizer gun. Juno recognized the shape of the weapon before it lifted, a hiss of compressed air, a sharp sting in his flank. He tried to leap, but his legs buckled, his vision spun. Everything slowed. The man clipped the leash around Juno's neck, whispered something inaudible, and dragged him through the back door into the night. By the time Elena returned, the house was quiet again, but not in the same way. The wind howled as Elena climbed her porch steps, wiping ice from her eyelashes. She pushed open the front door and called out, "Juno?" No answer. She froze, dropped her tool bag. "Juno!" She rushed inside, heart pounding. The blanket was disturbed. The heater unplugged, its cord stretched strangely toward the door. The back entrance, open a crack, snow gusting in. Her breath caught. She followed the draft out into the yard. Snow blew sideways, erasing everything. But there, tracks, human boot prints, large, heavy, leading away from the back of her house. Beside them, paw prints, dragging, staggering, a few drops of red stark against the white. Blood. Elena's stomach twisted. She ran back inside, fumbled with her phone, and called Noah. 20 minutes later, Noah Barrett arrived in his unmarked department SUV, tires crunching through the snow. He stepped out, flashlight in hand, jaw clenched against the cold. His eyes scanned the yard quickly before landing on the trail. "They were in and out in under 10 minutes, he said, kneeling to examine the prints. "Looks professional. The door was forced clean, no sign of struggle. He didn't even get to fight back." Elena stood behind him, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I never should have left him. You couldn't have known. I should have. After everything, after the fire, after what we learned. Of course someone wanted to silence him." Noah didn't argue. Instead, he gestured toward a lamppost 2 houses down, half buried in snow. "There's a private security cam up there, worth a shot." They drove to the corner and began scraping snow from the face of the camera, a small dome mounted beneath the eaves of a neighboring home. Noah accessed the live feed system using a wireless tablet issued to community officers. Then he frowned. "Disabled," he said. 20 minutes before the blackout hit. Every camera on this block went offline at once. Elena stared. Coordinated. Yeah, someone knew exactly when to strike, and how to cover their tracks. The next morning, after a sleepless night, Elena sat at her kitchen table with a steaming mug untouched in front of her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jenny Collins. "Ben found something." "Want to meet?" Elena replied instantly. "Yes, now." She met Ben Carter and Jenny at the university library, a warm island in the middle of a frozen city. Ben, 22, tall and wiry, with shaggy brown hair and an anxious demeanor, was already queued up on his laptop. His eyes were bloodshot, fingers fidgeting over the keyboard. Jenny, shorter, sharper in speech and dress, wore her brown hair in a tight braid and carried a kind of quiet confidence that made her seem older than her years. "I was reviewing drone footage from the Hanover fire again," Ben began, "and I noticed something weird in the background of the footage we never used. A truck. Black. Parked 2 blocks down, just sitting there during the whole thing." He played the clip. The drone soared over the smoky skyline, zoomed in on the rescue, then briefly panned across a dark alley. In the corner, barely visible, was a boxy black truck, parked but running. No logos. No plates visible. "That same model has been spotted at 2 other fire sites," Jenny added. "Same shape, same tinted windows. We ran the dimensions through traffic cam data and found one match last month." She handed Elena a printed photo, grainy but clear enough. "I've seen that truck," Elena said softly. "It was parked outside the old K9 training center the night I visited with Noah." "Exactly," Jenny replied. "And get this, we pulled the parking permits from that street. Only one company registered that vehicle ID. Krell Consolidated." Elena's pulse surged. "Alan Krell." Jenny nodded grimly. "He's not just wiping files. He's removing witnesses." That night, Elena stood in her yard again, wind howling, snow swirling around her boots. The trail had long since disappeared, but the image of it was burned into her mind. Juno was out there, cold, hurt, maybe worse. But he had survived worse before, and this time he wouldn't be alone. Elena sat in the passenger seat of Noah's SUV as they drove through Portwell's business district, snow melting into slick puddles beneath the afternoon sun. The storm had passed, but its aftermath clung to the streets. Fallen branches, shattered signage, silence. It was the kind of quiet that comes after something important has been taken. In her chest, Elena still felt the emptiness where Juno should have been. She hadn't slept since the night he was taken. Her face was drawn, eyes bruised with fatigue. But there was fire behind them now. Controlled, deliberate. She was no longer reacting. She was hunting. Noah drove in silence, jaw tight, fingers gripping the wheel a little too hard. He was dressed in plain clothes today, a black jacket zipped to his chin, dark jeans, his badge tucked away in his coat pocket instead of worn like a shield. His beard was scruffier than usual, and a faint scar just beneath his left eye caught the light. Most people didn't know he had it, left over from a fight he'd broken up between 2 drunks outside a bar 5 years ago. He never told the story. He didn't have to. They pulled into a lot outside a sleek steel and glass building with mirrored windows and a tall silver sign that read, Krell Consolidated Portwell Division. "This is it?" Elena asked, already unclipping her seatbelt. Noah nodded. "This is where the black truck's plate traces back to. The permit is under a shell company, but it funnels back here. Typical corporate laundering." They stepped into the building's lobby, greeted by marble floors, abstract paintings, and a young woman at the reception desk with perfectly straight blonde hair and a sharp navy suit. Her name tag read, Danielle. "May I help you?" she asked, eyes moving from Noah's coat to Elena's boots with polite suspicion. "We're here to see Alan Krell," Noah said. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," Elena replied, "but he has something that belongs to me." Danielle's practiced smile faltered just slightly. "Mr. Krell isn't available. I'd be happy to take a message." "We'll wait," Noah said, walking past her desk toward the elevator. "Sir, wait, you can't." But he already had his badge out, not flashing it to her, just showing it with a calm, practiced hand, the kind that told her this wasn't worth pushing against. She picked up her phone and made a quiet call as the elevator doors closed. On the top floor, Alan Krell's office was every inch what Elena expected. All black leather, brushed metal, and the scent of expensive cologne trying to hide something rotten. A towering man in his early 50s stood at the window, talking into a headset. His build was heavy but athletic, as if he still worked out for vanity. His hair, silver and slicked back, glinted under recessed lighting. His jaw was clean-shaven, but the cold sharpness of his eyes said he preferred using intimidation over conversation. When he saw them, he raised one finger for silence, finished his call, and turned. "Elena Rowe," he said smoothly, "and Officer Barrett. I heard about your visit to our training center. What can I do for you?" Elena stepped forward. "You can start by telling me where Juno is." He blinked. "Juno?" "Dog ID hash 3729B, Noah added. "Registered under your facility. Abandoned, taken from her property during a blackout coordinated with a camera shutdown tied to one of your trucks." Krell didn't flinch. "You're mistaken. We retired that animal years ago. It was deemed unstable, aggressive." "That's funny," Elena said, eyes narrowing, "because I've got footage of him rescuing a child from a burning warehouse and no signs of aggression. I've got a witness, and I've got a neighborhood full of people who saw that same dog gentle as a shadow." Krell sighed and walked around to his desk, pressing a button on the console. "You don't understand how things work here. These animals are tools. Expensive, yes, but tools. When they malfunction, we replace them. It's not personal." "You falsified behavioral reports," Noah said, stepping forward. "We've cross-checked 5 other cases. Same process, same facility. Dogs injured in the field, declared unfit, and written off. Insurance paid. Record scrubbed. But Juno slipped through, didn't he?" Krell looked at him evenly. "You think this city runs on truth, officer? It runs on silence, on efficiency. These dogs get injured, traumatized. Keeping them around is a liability. We do what's necessary." "You left him in the snow to die," Elena spat. "Better than what could have happened if he snapped on a civilian," Krell replied, tone clipped. A beat of silence passed. Elena's fists clenched at her sides. "You took something loyal and broke it." Krell smirked. "Everyone breaks eventually." They left before Elena could say what she wanted to say, before her fury became something less productive. Later that night, back at her house, Elena found Mildred Foster waiting on her porch, bundled in a deep burgundy coat and holding a weathered folder in her hands. Her face was pale, her movements slower than usual. "I thought you'd like to see this," she said, handing the folder to Elena. Inside were yellowing documents, land purchase attempts, complaint letters, zoning requests. "This is from 10 years ago," Mildred explained. "Alan Krell wanted to turn our neighborhood into a strip mall, said it was good for the city. Tried to buy out the block. I refused." "What happened?" "My property was flagged for code violations 3 weeks later. Strange break-ins. My mail stopped arriving on time. Quiet pressure. Legal enough to look random, pointed enough to feel personal." Elena looked up. "And now?" "Now I think he never stopped doing it. Just found a cleaner way." At midnight, Noah sat in his home office, eyes scanning digital copies of K9 records he'd accessed off the books. He found 6 more dogs labeled aggressive after being injured in the field. Every one of them retired within weeks. All records led back to Krell's facilities. One entry caught his attention. Dog ID hash 3731C Rex, declared unstable after burn trauma, removed from service 2 years ago. The incident location? Hanover warehouse fire. He clicked on the report. The behavioral notes were written by a man named Thomas Garvey, listed as an independent contractor and animal behaviorist. Noah narrowed his eyes. He didn't remember anyone named Garvey being at the warehouse that night. And the signature on the form? Alan Krell, in faint blue ink. By dawn, the truth had hardened into something sharp. Krell wasn't just discarding dogs. He was orchestrating their erasure. And Juno was the one survivor that had slipped past the curtain. The Portwell Civic Center gleamed under the mid-morning sun, its glass facade polished for the press. Banners fluttered on either side of the main entrance, reading, "New Horizons, Portwell's Future in Safe Hands." A red carpet had been rolled out over slush-streaked pavement. A stage was being set up on the steps, rows of white folding chairs arranged with surgical precision. At the center of it all stood Alan Krell, dressed in a slate-gray overcoat that perfectly matched his silvered hair and tailored arrogance. He was shaking hands with council members and smiling for cameras, a man who had mastered the art of appearing indispensable. Elena stood at the edge of the crowd, a black scarf pulled high around her neck and a knit beanie shadowing her eyes. She looked sharper than usual today. Clean lines, dark clothing, boots polished like armor. The exhaustion of the past week lingered around her jaw, but it couldn't dull the cold clarity in her gaze. Next to her, Noah Barrett blended into the milling crowd in a dark peacoat, sunglasses, and the calm presence of someone used to moving unnoticed. Tucked into his inside pocket was a slim recording device already capturing everything. The same device had been running 2 nights earlier during their visit to Krell's office, recording his casual cruelty with crisp clarity. The plan was simple: bait, wait, and broadcast. They watched as Krell stepped to the podium, microphone hissing softly as the sound tech, a young woman with rainbow-colored nails and a clipboard covered in stickers, gave him a thumbs up. Krell cleared his throat and began. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us to celebrate the groundbreaking of Portwell's newest public safety initiative. Behind the podium, a large screen displayed architectural renderings of a sprawling training compound, drone fields, and sleek K9 housing units. Elena recognized the building design. He was selling his newest vision under the same banner that had allowed him to bury dogs like Juno. As the crowd applauded, Elena stepped forward. Not to the front, not to confront him outright, but toward the media section, where local reporters held up phones and microphones. Noah followed her, and together they passed a camera crew from Channel 12, a local affiliate led by Kira Maddox, a petite woman in her 40s with red hair, sharp brown eyes, and the manner of someone who hadn't trusted anyone in 20 years. She was holding a mic in one hand and sipping coffee with the other. Elena stopped beside her. "You want a real story?" she said. "One that starts with a dog tied to a lamppost and ends with corruption that runs through every contract Krell's ever touched?" Kira lowered her cup slowly. "I'm listening." Noah handed her a flash drive. "Everything's on there. Voice recordings, forged documents, behavioral reports, scrubbed and rewritten, surveillance footage, including one very clear admission from Krell himself." Kira didn't say anything for several long seconds. Then she whistled low. "And who's your source?" "Elena Rowe," Elena said. "And a dog named Juno. He saved a boy from a fire. Then they tried to erase him." Kira tucked the drive into her coat. "Let's make sure that doesn't happen." As Krell wrapped up his speech, a murmur passed through the crowd. Several phones began to buzz. Kira stepped up with her crew, tapping her producer. Moments later, one of the giant screens behind Krell flickered, then cut away from the architectural plans to a grainy video clip. The footage played without warning: a burning building, screams, a child crawling through smoke, and then Juno, lean, desperate, blood on his leg, racing into frame, dragging the boy out. The clip continued. Krell's voice, clear as a bell. "You think this city runs on truth, officer? It runs on silence." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alan Krell turned, face hardening, eyes darting across the audience. The screen flicked again, this time showing a collage of files, insurance forms, retired K9 profiles, marked unfit in red ink. Elena stepped into view then, climbing the edge of the stage. Krell saw her and froze. "You lied about them," she said, voice calm but ringing. "About Juno, about every animal you discarded like broken equipment. And you knew exactly what you were doing." Security moved, but Noah intercepted with a flash of his badge and a warning glance. "She's not the problem here. He is." Reporters swarmed like sharks drawn to blood. Flashbulbs popped. Kira asked the first question aloud, voice cutting clean through the chaos. "Mr. Krell, how long have you been falsifying K9 retirement documents for insurance gain?" Krell's mouth opened, but no sound came. Later that afternoon, Portwell PD's Internal Affairs Division received a neatly labeled package from Noah Barrett containing full documentation. Krell was placed under investigation for insurance fraud, perjury, and obstruction. He denied all charges, But the footage spoke louder than he ever could. That evening, while the news buzzed with the story, Ben Carter and Jenny Collins sat in the corner of a local cafe, laptops open. Their footage had gone viral, first through a campus leak, then shared by Kira's news team. Their inboxes were full of interview requests, podcast invites, and even one from a national animal rights group. Ben looked stunned, as if success had physically struck him in the chest. Do we keep going? Jenny, stirring her tea, grinned. You think we're done? They hit upload on a second video, this time a montage honoring K9S, discarded under Krell's watch. It ended with a photo of Juno and a simple caption. He never stopped doing his job. We just stopped seeing it. Meanwhile, back at her home, Elena sat in the quiet with Mildred Foster, who had come by unannounced with a tray of shortbread cookies and a typed letter folded neatly in her coat pocket. I sent this to the city council, she said, placing it on the coffee table. Elena picked it up and read, To whom it may concern, we owe Juno more than silence. We owe him more than a name buried in a file. That dog saved a life and paid the price for being too brave, too loyal. I watched him drag a child from a fire when no one else could. And I watched you erase him like he never mattered. This city owes him a home, a monument, and a name spoken with pride. You owe him an apology. And so do I. Sincerely, Mildred Foster. Elena looked up, emotion catching in her throat. Mildred just sipped her tea. I was wrong about you, the older woman said. You're not just fixing power lines anymore. Elena smiled faintly. Neither are you. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, snow began to fall again, but this time gently, like something being returned rather than taken. Spring came to Portwell quietly that year, arriving not with a grand flourish of blossoms, but with the soft parting of gray clouds and the steady melt of stubborn snow. The city, for all its cold grit, began to breathe again. Windows opened. Lawns reappeared. Birds stitched their songs into the wind. And in a small neighborhood on the east side, a dog lay in the sun like he had always belonged there. Juno, still lean but stronger now, stretched on a patch of dry earth behind Elena's house, his black and tan fur catching the light like worn leather. His eyes, once dulled by fear and hunger, now held the rich amber glow of peace. One ear flicked at the sound of wind chimes. His tail thudded gently on the ground every time someone passed through the back door. Elena sat nearby on the steps, sipping coffee, her legs crossed, posture relaxed in a way it hadn't been in years. Her hoodie was too big, her jeans frayed at the knees, and her boots still held salt from the winter, but she looked content. Weathered, yes, but whole. Her mornings had changed. No more silent routine. Now there was warmth in the quiet. A new ritual. Greeting the day with the dog who had once been discarded like an empty shell and now occupied the heart of her home. After everything, the lies, the storm, the fight, this simple backyard had become a battlefield won. A knock came from the front door, followed by a familiar, rapid-fire voice. "Elena, you home? I brought club paperwork and also peanut butter bones, but I might have eaten one because it smelled good and I was curious." Elena stood and opened the door to find Ava Lamont bundled in her usual chaos of colors. Striped leggings, a bright yellow raincoat, and a backpack that looked like it had been chewed by time. The girl's cheeks were flushed with excitement, a stack of papers cradled in one arm and a large biscuit in the other. "You ate a dog treat?" Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. Ava shrugged. "I read the ingredients. It's mostly oats and honey. Technically edible." She slipped past Elena into the house and dropped her papers on the kitchen table. "We're starting a club. It's called Portwell Animal Allies, or PAA for short, which sounds like POW, and I think that's a sign." Elena smirked, flipping through the packet. "And you want me to be club advisor? It's in the rules. We need a responsible adult. And since you saved a dog from being erased by corporate corruption and gave him a warm backyard, you qualify." Elena snorted. "That's a hell of a resume. Plus, you have a coffee maker," Ava added seriously. "We'll probably need caffeine for our fundraisers." Before Elena could respond, the back door creaked open again. Juno wandered in slowly, his steps measured but strong. Ava dropped to her knees. "Hi, buddy," she said gently. "I know you're not a puppy, but I got you a chew stick anyway. Also, I'm putting your face on the club logo." Juno blinked slowly and pressed his head into her shoulder. Later that week, Ben Carter and Jenny Collins arrived to pick Elena and Juno up for the TEDx event. Their car, a battered green Subaru with protest stickers and drone parts in the back seat, idled in the driveway as Elena adjusted Juno's harness and slung her bag over her shoulder. Ben, still shy and soft-spoken, had trimmed his unruly hair and wore a pressed flannel over jeans that didn't quite fit. He smiled nervously as Juno hopped into the back seat. Jenny, sharp-eyed and focused as always, sat behind the wheel. Her hair was now streaked with purple, and her laptop case was covered in new stickers. Rescue, reclaim, remember. "You ready for this?" Jenny asked. Elena buckled her seatbelt. "No, but we're going anyway." The event was held in the university's small theater. The crowd wasn't large, students, faculty, a few journalists, but the stage lights were hot, and the microphone hummed in Elena's hand. Juno sat at her feet, calm, unmoving, a quiet sentinel. Elena cleared her throat, her voice steady but low. "When I first found Juno, he was tied to a post in the snow, eyes vacant, ribs showing. I thought I was saving a dog, but what I didn't understand was he had already saved people. He had risked everything for a child in a burning building. He'd done his job, and the world tried to forget him." The screen behind her played silent clips, Juno dragging a boy through smoke, lying limp in her arms, resting beside her in the backyard. They said he was unstable, broken, unfit. But what I've learned is this: loyalty doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just stays, even when it's cold, even when it's betrayed. Juno looked up at her then, and for a moment Elena forgot the lights, the crowd, the fear. He's not just a rescue dog. He's a reminder of what we owe those who give their all and ask for nothing. The audience stood before the applause even started. Jenny wiped a tear. Ben grinned wide enough to make his cheeks flush. And Juno? He wagged his tail just once, as if to say, "That'll do." The following Sunday, the neighborhood threw an informal block gathering. Tables lined the sidewalk. Kids drew paw prints in chalk. Mildred Foster brought lemon bars and insisted on retelling her story to anyone within earshot. She wore a hand-knitted sweater that read, "Team Juno," across the chest in chunky blue yarn. Even people who had never spoken to Elena before came over to pet Juno, to ask how they could help, to share stories of their own dogs long gone. Someone, probably Ava, had hung a handmade sign across Elena's porch. "Welcome home, hero." That night, after the last guest left and the stars bled softly into the sky, Elena sat on the back steps with Juno beside her. The garden was quiet, the house behind her full of warmth and memory. She reached down and scratched behind his ear. "You're not broken," she whispered. "You're just finally where you were always meant to be." Juno exhaled through his nose and rested his head on her knee, and for the first time in a long time, nothing hurt. Sometimes miracles don't come with thunder or light. They come quietly, on four tired legs, in the eyes of a dog who refuses to stop believing. Juno wasn't just a dog. He was a second chance, a reminder that no matter how forgotten, broken, or discarded we feel, God still sees us. In the coldest moment of his life, tied and abandoned in the snow, God sent someone, not a hero in shining armor, but a woman with a scarred heart and a toolbox, and through her, grace moved. Just like Juno, there are people and souls all around us today waiting for someone to notice, waiting for kindness, waiting for mercy. Maybe you're that person. Maybe today, God's miracle will come through you. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment and share what Juno reminded you of. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story of courage, compassion, and hope. And share this with someone who needs to be reminded that they are never truly forgotten. May God bless you. May He guide your steps, warm your spirit, and send you light on the coldest days. And may you too become someone's miracle,